Hey, thanks for joining me. This one's a long time coming. Gen-13 issue 1, the first issue of the miniseries that introduced these characters. I've been going through all my old Image comics over the last I've been doing this YouTube channel thing for almost 2 years, almost as of this recording. I think I'm a month away from doing having a 2-year anniversary of doing this stuff. And I'm going over all these old early Image comics, as well as all the other stuff I'm doing. There's been a lot of fun. But Gen-13, the original miniseries, is not something I read in real time when it came out. In fact, this copy I got, I've actually had it in hands for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. But I've basically given it my first read just right here. I never picked up the original miniseries when it was coming out in 93, February 94. I eventually, as the series went on from the miniseries here, and then it's after, I think it was 5 issues of the miniseries, and then it went into the Gen-13 regular series. I didn't start picking it up until issue like 4 or 5, something like that. And the reason I didn't start picking up until late is because, being completely honest, J. Scott Campbell's artwork did not appeal to me at all. I didn't get the appeal. But he rapidly got really good, and his artwork morphed into something that my eye was suddenly interested in and was drawn to. And so then I started picking up Gen-13, like I said, a few issues into the regular run. And I seem to remember enjoying those for the most part. I haven't reread those issues in decades, but we will definitely get to them. But figured we'd start right here with just the first issue of the miniseries. Most people know that this was a big deal. This took off and blew up. It became hyper popular. The characters and the art from J. Scott Campbell, everyone was into it. I remember hearing about it all over the place, and people were just going gaga over this. But again, for me at the time, did not like it. I just didn't see the appeal of this guy's artwork. Looking at his work now, this original work, looking at it, decades later, I can certainly see the obvious raw, just sheer raw potential artistically that J. Scott Campbell had. I can see why Jim Lee saw this guy's work and snagged him up. One of the smartest things he ever did. It's still not artwork that would make me pick up a book based on the art alone, but I can see the obvious raw talent on display. So artistically, it's fine, not my favorite. And then I've talked about this before. I've looked at some Gen-13 stuff. There's like The Ordinary Heroes by Adam Hughes. I believe I looked at the issues that Jim Lee drew on the regular series, several issues down the road there that just look like garbage as compared to what J. Scott Campbell was doing at that time. Like, Jim Lee's artwork just does not work with these characters. But the characters in the book, I don't really feel like I don't get the appeal of the book, honestly. Like I said, the artwork, I kind of understand why people liked it, but just the characters, like I said, I've looked at some of the books and talked about the characters a little bit, but my statement that on why Gen-13 was popular, in my opinion, is only because of the artwork, because these stories and most of these characters are not interesting. I know a lot of people like the main characters. You got Fairchild, Grunge, Free Fall, and I can never remember the goddamn flaming guy. Whatever the fuck his name is. They're kind of interesting. And the dynamic between these young kids and their powers did kind of have a kind of an appeal. But all the other bad guys, the villains, the soldiers, none of these characters were interesting. It was just another standard cliche Wildstorm book that just did not, it just didn't, they just weren't interesting. Wildcats was not that interesting of a story. Stormwatch was not that interesting. You know, and then Gen-13 is the same thing. It's like, it's just like cliche nonsense. So I know I'm kind of going against what the popular kind of opinion is. This book was very popular, but if it wasn't for this art, do you think this book would have been as successful? I say no. The story is not that interesting. Well, the basic concept is okay. The way it's told is not interesting. It's very cliche, but the characters are kind of fun, the main characters. And again, I maintain that as J. Scott Campbell went on, his skills improved dramatically, page by page, issue by issue. And I feel like he had input on the story because he was the draw. And so they were asking him, it seems, like, well, what do you want to do? Where do you want to take these characters? And it seems like he had a lot of input on it. And in interjecting a kind of a lot of youthful kind of fun and energy into the book, and the art kept it popular, in my opinion. But again, if it wasn't this art, this book would fail. It is not good. It is not interesting. That's 48-year-old me reading it right now. When did this come out? So 93, 94, that's 17-year-old me. I still don't think I would have liked it. So I'm kind of curious as to what all of you thought. For those of you who read this in real time when it was coming out, and then if you can look at it objectively now, is the story actually any good? Like, be honest. And if you think so, then that's fair. Like, I'm not trying to take away anyone's opinion. This is just my thoughts. But the way the story is told is cliche and boring as hell. The basic story itself, just like if you just give a summation of, you just sum up the plot, it's kind of like, okay, that's fine. It's nothing unique, but it's kind of okay. The idea is okay. It's just not told very well. And I'm sorry, I've said this. Jim Lee's not a good writer, and Brandon Choi sucks as a writer. There's nothing he's written that's worth a piss. I'm sorry, no disrespect to the human being. God, everything he's written is god-awful terrible. Pencils, J. Scott Campbell. Inks, Alex Garner. That was a pretty magical combo. Joe Chiodo on colors. I've always dug his coloring on these books. I mean, it always looked good to me. He got some ink assists and all that stuff. So, you know, so the basic story starts out 1979. You got some people running. They're in the rain, couple adults, couple of kids, and then just these I actually don't necessarily mind the design of these bad guy soldiers with these technological helmets and gears and guns and stuff. It's just that I've seen these basic designs drawn by Jim Lee, and so they just look like Jim Lee generic bad guys, and it's kind of okay. And Campbell does okay. It's just, I've seen these guys. In fact, I swear I've seen these same fucking soldiers shooting at Wolverine and Psylocke in Uncanny X-Men in the, what was it, the Extinction Agenda? I don't know. It's just, it's not a bad design, but it's also, I've seen these things. But the story, adults running, kids with them, and these soldiers just unload and just shoot the mom to death right on page 1. So that was actually like, okay, that's kind of, that's brutal. That's pretty shocking. And I'm okay with brutal and shocking. I don't know that you could be flying around and unload with like machine guns and hit the mom and not hit the kid. Obviously, we're not going to machine gun to death a couple of kids, though. That would have been pretty awesome. So the dad, the father, he gets pissed off and shoots eye lasers or whatever, blows up the thing. Like, dude, you should have blown these fuckers up before they shot your wife to death in front of your children. But using his powers, knocks him on his ass. The dad's telling the kid, you got to run, you got to get away from these people, go, go, go. Soldiers, again, I've seen this shot. These, you know, we've seen these soldiers. The guns are pretty good. You know, Campbell's obviously really good on details. But the soldiers shoot the dad dead. Boom. Blood flying everywhere on top of the kid's face. Horrific thing for this kid to have to witness. So that was in 1979. Cut to 1994, which seems so goddamn far away because I graduated high school in 95. But this was the modern day at the time. And so we are introduced to what I maintain is the one and only truly interesting and unique character in the Gen-13 world, and that is Caitlyn Fairchild. Grunge, boring. Roxy, boring. Flame guy, boring. Eventually we get to Rainmaker, the Native American lesbian. I can't even really explain to you much of the personal characteristics of all those other characters. I just don't really feel like they clicked. And again, I know a lot of people liked these kids, but I like the Fairchild character because I like the idea that she starts out as this 5 foot tall, 109 pound, little mousy, shy, brainy nerd, which is what all this text tells you. And she's a roommate in college with this like rich bitch, snarky asshole that she's always getting pushed around with. But Fairchild, this innocent, brainy kid, she goes through a transformation at the end of the book, which makes it kind of an interesting dynamic. Now, it's no secret. I'm not gonna wait till the end of the book to discuss what happens to her. You can see it here. She goes from a skinny, like nobody that no one pays attention to, men are not interested in, because she's just, you know, so boring and uninteresting. She's not sexualized is basically it, but she's this super smart, brainy chick. But when she gets her Gen-13 powers activated, she grows tall to be 6 foot something, huge muscles, big wide hips, huge tits, becomes a sex goddess with the power of She-Hulk, basically, it seems. And taking skinny, boring nerd girl and putting her in sex goddess body, but she's also super brainy, smart girl. That's an interesting enough dynamic to make it kind of an interesting character and have her juxtaposed against the world now being, you know, in a body she doesn't know how to deal with. So I like that aspect. It kind of makes for an interesting character. Yes, it kind of hinges on like sexualizing the character, but let's be honest, that's one of the things about these books that hooked people. Is kind of like the teen sex nonsense. It's kind of fine. I don't think it ever crossed any lines. J. Scott Campbell's artwork, again, it's kind of Jim Lee clone mixed with cartoony animator style, which I think is the exact perfect way to describe his work. And you can see this kind of cartoony fun that he does in these characters in the background. He never skimps on details, clothing, fashion, proper perspective. I sit here and I remember that I didn't care for his figure work because it was kind of rubbery and kind of goofy looking, and I like a more Jim Lee, Travis Charest, Whilce Portacio kind of more realistic, ripped superhero style. This work didn't appeal to me, but again, as a looking at it with the more kind of understanding eye, Campbell has a grasp of so many things so good, so early. Again, perspective, details, backgrounds, all the details in the room. He draws it all. He's got a lot of skills that I didn't give him credit for at the time. So I actually appreciate the art way more than I did when I was a kid and looked at it and go, it just looked kind of rubbery and weird and misshapen and cliche faces. But you can see, like I've already said before, the seeds of a brilliant artist are completely evident. It just needed to kind of grow and mature past leave behind the Jim Lee clone stuff and become who you are. And every artist needs time to grow, and you just do it page by page. So I give Campbell a lot more credit for this work, even though it's not enough to completely draw my eye. You can see how good it actually is. Excuse me. So you got, college drama with the rich girl telling Caitlyn, like, hey, I need you out of the room later. I'm going to come back with my boyfriend and fuck him later. So you need to go be elsewhere. So she takes herself, and she's been working in like the she's doing some lab work, and then some government. This is where the story is just losing me. Again, I get what they're trying to do, and they're trying to cram a bunch of information in the story up front, but the way it's kind of told, just it's kind of silly. It's kind of stupid. I don't know how you tell this same story in a way that I think would make better sense by a good writer. You'd have to kind of restructure the whole thing to get the same point across. But the idea is that these government scientists show up. They know that she's kind of linked to her family is linked to the like Team 7 group. If you know Wildstorm comics, you know the Team 7 group. Bunch of guys that were exposed to some powers. Her father is one of those guys, so she's got genetic superpowers potentially built into her DNA. The government wants to exploit them, so they show up undercover as secret, like, hey, we're part of this amazing like government school program. You've been accepted. You should come with us, but you have to come with us right now. Like right now. It's super late at night, and she's like, oh, okay, government guys I've never seen before. I guess I'll go with you. It's kind of unbelievable and stupid, but I get what they're trying to do. Cut back to, now we're back with Lynch and Ivana Bayul, I think is who it is. Like this bad guy, this girl, she's super not interesting. Lynch was kind of okay. He was on Team 7. He was kind of basically a bad guy, but he always had a little bit of a moral center and becomes kind of the leader and mentor of the Gen-13 kids. And this is just showing how that all builds up to that moment. So they're having evil bad guy talk about how they're recruiting kids and he doesn't like it and we shouldn't do this, but she's going to do it. And there's this one guy they've already recruited who's got some kind of weird metal plate over one eye. He's a super badass martial artist. He's training and beating the shit out of guys. And when somebody else sneaks up behind him and busts the fucking stick over his head, this guy, they call him Threshold, he uses his magic laser eye powers. So I'm guessing this guy here is the kid from the beginning who watched his family get murdered right in front of him, because the eye powers from the dad here are the same thing on the kid here. So that would make sense that he watched his family get killed. So now he's grown up to be a bad guy. He blows up guys' heads. So he's a super bad guy. And then this is his sister. So I guess this is the girl from the beginning. Again, Campbell's artwork, I don't like the figure work, but I also, like, I'm just repeating myself. You can see what he has. You can see the skill that's there. This is, again, it's not as good as, I'm just comparing the work to the best artists I've seen draw female figures. And at this point, when this book come out, I've seen Jim Lee draw the hottest girls. I've seen Silvestri, things like that. This just doesn't compare. It looks like a pale imitation, like a Jim Lee clone, but cartoonier. But again, just looking at it fresh now, it's pretty fucking good. It's pretty damn good anatomy. It's kind of got a goofy looking face. Her lips are kind of weird, the jawline. But you can see where Campbell is just a genius in the rough. Diamond in the rough. And he's going to get better real quick. So, yeah, brother and sister, they're bad guys. They're murderous little pieces of shit. So, okay, we're set with the bad guy. So, it's very cliche stuff. It's not interesting. There's nothing story-wise that's actually interesting so far but with any of these other characters besides Caitlyn so far, kind of. But artistically, I can see why people were grabbing onto this. Lynch is still trying to kind of work things out in his favor. This is setting up how he's working for the bad guys, but he's going to kind of become a good guy. So Fairchild, she's at this government program, and she's like, this doesn't feel like a school. This feels more like a military setup, and this blubberous, whatever the hell this character is just kind of placating her. It's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. We've got a lot of work to do. You know, you'll fit right in soon. So then later, Fairchild, she wakes up, she puts on her giant round nerd glasses and runs out into the room. And this is where we run into Grunge for the first time. And of course, Grunge is the goofy, like, dummy of the group, really. I guess his name's Bernard Chang, and I think he's supposed to be Asian, which I didn't know that for years, honestly. I mean, I guess you could hear the name, but he doesn't look that way. So am I wrong? Do I have that correct? Sometimes the writers would write his character kind of funny. Like there's moments where the character was actually kind of funny and I laughed at the jokes and the setups. None of this shit. Again, it's all kind of standard stuff, but we're building it up. This is where Grunge and Fairchild meet. We got Roxy and what's his name? The guy in the background that gets the fire powers. And they're all students at this quote unquote school. And now that they've all met, they're like, we should be a team together. We should join up together and be a squad in this school and kick everyone's asses. And so they go through these training programs, and the text is basically saying that they learned that if they work together as a team, they excel way better than all the rest of the students in the school, and they leave everyone else behind. So, you know, teamwork makes the dream work or some shit. Again, Campbell's artwork, I'm not digging it. Again, I'm not digging it as compared as to the artwork that I loved at the time. It's kind of a goofy looking face. Let me bring up, like, look at Fairchild's face there. Look at that weird misshapen face. It's really goofy, but also by the same token, Grunge there, funny kind of expression. And the one thing I was also noticing is Campbell's really good at drawing hands. Like for an early level artist, like I've been drawing forever, and I struggle with hands a lot. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, Campbell does pretty damn good hands for such a young guy just getting started. Again, we're just looking at how good he actually was, even though I'm not digging a lot of the stylistic artwork that he does. Before the story continues, we get a Gen-13 pinup by Jim Lee and Alex Garner. And it's a little 3-tier pullout. There's nothing interesting there, and this is Jim Lee. You know, I guess it's structurally better. I like Grunge, looks kind of cool. I like the gun. Jim Lee's always going to draw hot babes, but there's nothing really that unique about Fairchild there. This shot of Roxy is kind of good. I don't know if the bubble gum blowing up like bubble works. It's kind of okay. I get what he's doing. You see it and you get it, but I'd rather just see her face. I like her hair. The gun's good. Hot body, but again, she's supposed to be like a 15-year-old girl or some shit? Or 16? Something like that. These are like teenagers, if I remember the ages correctly. I mean, Fairchild was in college, so she's 19 or something like that. I don't know. It's just, it looks good, but she doesn't look like a kid. She looks like a young adult. Boring face on the flame guy, and boring fucking fist. Not that I could do any better. So, I don't know. I like Roxy's head minus the bubblegum. I think Grunge, his face is good. The arm is cool with the gun is good. And Fairchild's just kind of boring. It's just an interesting pinup that lacks all the interest that Campbell would later inject into these characters. It's not the same. Man, they are hyping the hell out of the Claremont Jim Lee comic, Wildcats 10, 11, 12, because you got an ad there. Flip it over. Another ad for it. Another ad for it. Like, they spent 3 pages to hype this up, which, why wouldn't you? It's the same artist and writer together again on a comic that did the #1 selling American comic book of all time. How could you not hype the ever-loving shit out of it? It's such a shame that, by God, was that story boring as fuck. I mean, Claremont interjected more character into those stories, into the, I almost call them X-Men, into the Wildcats than had ever been done before. Still wasn't good. Anyway, back to the story. We got, is it Ivana Bayul? Is that her name? She's just still sitting around in a chair looking like a hooker, doing nothing, talking with the bad guys. Boring. They're talking about that Fairchild and Grunge are not demonstrating any of the gen factor, the genetic superpowered factors that some of the others are. So they're like, well, up her dosage in her meals. They've been feeding them these drugs that I guess is supposed to activate their latent powers. So Fairchild, she's waking up. She's got a headache. She's feeling nauseous. She pukes. That face, I have to imagine that Campbell would look at this drawing and just be embarrassed. It's really terrible. And again, I say this is, I fully acknowledge what Campbell becomes, but the face looks terrible. The eyes look weird. The hand looks god-awful strange. The shape of the back of the head it's misplaced and misshapen. It's kind of weird. But, I mean, they can't all be winners. He's a brand new artist. He's starting. He's learning. This shot of her almost silhouette, that looks pretty freaking good. That I kind of dig. But she wakes up. She's sick. She's puking. She's got headaches. She doesn't feel good. She wanders out, and as she passes by the doors, you can see that they show that her hand, she pressed her fingers into the metal of the wall. The implication is that she's getting strong enough to bend steel. Wanders into a computer room and is able to access computer programs. It should be protected files, and sees that her dad is listed here somewhere, who she doesn't know her dad, hasn't met him. I don't know what the story is. Oh, and then Grunge, because he's such a fucking goofball, he just pops down from above her upside down, scares her. They show how Fairchild's getting strong again because she bashes her elbow up against a computer terminal here and cracks it. But then Grunge just comes out of the ventilation shafts, I guess, in this hyper-secret computer information room. And Roxy's up there. She's saying, oh, we just crawl through the vents to get some private time. Again, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to have a silly moment and get a way to get these characters together in a super secret facility. But you're telling me this hyper-advanced government program that's doing secret, shady, illegal shit, and these kids could just crawl through the ventilation shafts big enough for their bodies to fit through and get into computer rooms? Like, it's all stupid. It's cliche bullshit. But it's a comic book about teenagers with superpowers. I don't know. Whatever. And then generic soldier shows up and he's pissed off. How did you fuckers get here? Shoves her around, puts a gun in her face. Grunge starts trying to tell him off, so soldier guy punches him. Oh, look how clever. Grunge has got like fluffy bear slippers on. Did he show that before? Yeah, they did. Because Grunge is just such a goofball. He's got it. I guess it's funny. I mean, it's not to me, but I'm a 48-year-old old man now, so maybe 17-year-old me would have thought that's funny. I just think it's kind of stupid. It's not like the worst thing ever. But Grunge is knocked out. Roxy's pissed off. Soldier's pointing a gun at him. But then he turns around and bitch slaps the fuck out of Fairchild, as I spit on the comic book there. So now she's pissed, and now she gets an attitude. She's like, oh my God, the pain, it's back. My whole body feels like it's on fire. God, I've heard that 1,000 times. I'm in pain. I'm on fire. And so the soldier tells her, sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up. And so then she starts crackling with energy and says, you shouldn't have hit me. That was a big mistake, Buster. It's like, I don't get why she's talking tough. She doesn't know she has powers. She's like a 110-pound little fucking weakling. But why is she getting tough? Maybe it's the energies affecting her mind. She's getting tough. Again, it's just cliche comic book shit. But, so she jumps up and punches him right in the fucking mush. Bam! Socks him. And she's like, the pain's getting worse. The energy's crackling around her. Her clothes are ripping. So Roxy and Grunge are like watching in shock. Roxy's like, are you all right? And Grunge is like, she looks pretty good to me. So then here's a revelation where, Fairchild, I get it. I think it works, but I think it could have been done better. I think that Campbell, I had this dumb idea. It would be really fun to see Campbell redraw this entire issue with his artistic abilities today. I bet you this book would be so goddamn good, from an artistic perspective, of course. I just feel like he could do better. I think they needed to amp up her skinniness. It's kind of there to make her look like a skinny little weakling. I guess it's there. I know what they're trying to do. The idea is that she grew taller by, say she went from 5 foot to 6'7". Muscles, huge, pointy, silicone-filled titties. Her outfit is just shredded off her. So her powers are activated. So again, she's become this giant, muscular sex goddess. Again, like I said earlier, the idea of this nerdy little shy thing who no one has ever paid attention to her before. Now she's in this hyper hot body, and grunge definitely gets it. I feel like this could have been shown a little bit better. And again, I bet if Campbell did it today, this would look 1,000 times better. But all in all, it's not too bad, really. It works. You get the idea. And again, interjecting the sexuality, the sexiness of this stuff is what actually I think is one of the major selling points of the book. It's the humor between the kids, it's J. Scott Campbell's artwork, and the sexiness of the girls. That's what makes this book sell, not the vastly interesting story. So it feels like this is it's a $2.50 book. Feels a little thicker than your standard comic. I appreciate that they put in the back a sketchbook with Jim Lee and J. Scott Campbell sketches. So this is some Jim Lee sketchwork stuff. These are pretty cool. This is Campbell. You know, good looking stuff there. Not 100% sure. I think this is Campbell stuff here. This is Jim Lee there, and I'm going to say down there. I think that's Campbell there. But I like seeing the sketches and the way they working it out. Again, these characters drawn by Jim Lee, uninteresting as hell. These characters drawn by J. Scott Campbell, actually interesting and fun. That's what I'm saying. I'm just repeating it myself, but Campbell brings the fun. Jim Lee does not have that with these characters. Kindred, number 1, I reviewed those. Deathblow, number 3, I looked at that. So anyway, that's, you know, Gen-13, number 1. Wasn't interested as a kid. Story-wise, it kind of sucks. Didn't care for the artwork when I was younger, but grown up now, I see it. You can see the skills that were there. I've said all of this. It's certainly an interesting artifact from the era. This book would go on to be like the Wildstorm book, like the hyper popular one. You know, Image Comic was founded on the 7 original guys, and then Wildstorm itself, it was all about Jim Lee on Wildcats. But that kind of didn't hold the interest that I think everyone kind of wanted it to. And then Gen-13 comes along and blows up. And it's kind of the same thing over at Top Cow. Michael Turner showed up and got on Witchblade, and that blew up. And it's kind of like J. Scott Campbell and Michael Turner were like competing for like most popular new artist who drew the sexiest babes and the funnest book. And it doesn't have to be a contest and one of them has to win and one of them has to lose. As long as they're both doing good work and it's fun and we can enjoy it all, and then we all win. And that's what was awesome about these books. Like I said, I ended up liking the book and collected it on the regular once Campbell's work kind of matured, which again did not take long. So that's it. Gen-13 number 1. I've got issues 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll look at them here separately. And I'd like to know what you guys thought about this. Like, what did you think at the time? And then what do you think about it, like looking back at it objectively? Like, what was actually good about it? Am I wrong? Am I off base? What did you think? It's certainly got its place in history and Image Comics. Good times there. And, I wish comic books these days had some kind of fun like these did. But, man, the market is just not the same. It is not even close to the same anymore. And there's just nothing out there that's grabbing attention quite as much as it used to in the 90s. So anyway, that's all I've got. Gen-13 number 1. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.